The cold November wind whipped through Madison Square as Abigail Parker rushed her son Jake across the busy intersection. Her weathered sneakers slapped against the wet pavement, a sharp contrast to the gleaming black Aston Martin that purred to a stop at the traffic light beside them. "Mom, look! It's the car man!" Jake pointed excitedly, his blue mittens flapping in the air. Abigail tugged his arm gently. "Honey, it's not polite to point." She quickened their pace, the double shift at Rosetta's Italian bistro weighing on her tired legs. Single motherhood at 28 wasn't what she had planned, but Jake's father had walked out when she was 7 months pregnant, leaving nothing but a hastily scribbled note and empty promises. "But Mom, that's the man I always see," Jake insisted, his 6-year-old face lighting up with excitement. "The one with the fancy car who goes into the big glass building." Abigail glanced back briefly, catching a glimpse of the driver, a sharp-jawed man in an impeccably tailored suit, his attention fixed on his phone. Nathan Reed, CEO of Reed Innovations. Everyone in Manhattan knew who he was, the 35-year-old tech mogul whose face graced business magazines and whose name dominated financial news. His company headquarters towered over Parkside Elementary, where Jake attended first grade. "Come on, buddy. We're going to be late for your drop-off," Abigail said, hoisting her waitress uniform higher in her tote bag. Mrs. Wilson from apartment 4B could only watch Jake for so long before her own shift started. 2 blocks later, Jake was safely delivered to his classroom, and Abigail was sprinting toward Rosetta's, her breath forming small clouds in the chilly air. The restaurant, an upscale Italian establishment nestled between a law firm and a boutique clothing store, catered to Manhattan's elite. It was a world away from the cramped 1-bedroom apartment she shared with Jake, in a building with perpetually broken elevators. "You're cutting it close, Abby," Marcus, the head waiter, remarked as she rushed through the back entrance. "Sorry, Jake was extra chatty this morning," she replied, tying her apron with practiced efficiency. Her fingers moved automatically, tucking her chestnut hair into a neat bun as she scanned the reservation list. Her heart sank when she spotted Reed Table 7 penciled in for lunch. Nathan Reed was a regular at Rosetta's, known for his exacting standards and generous, if impersonal, tips. He typically ignored the waitstaff beyond placing his order, his attention constantly divided between his laptop and phone. Abigail had served him countless times, yet she doubted he could pick her out of a lineup. The lunch rush hit with its usual intensity, and Abigail moved between tables with graceful efficiency, balancing plates and managing demands with the diplomacy that had earned her the coveted Friday and Saturday night shifts. When Nathan Reed arrived at precisely 1:15 p.m., she was assigned to his table. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed." "Welcome back to Rosetta's," she greeted, setting down the sparkling water he always ordered without asking. He barely looked up, merely nodding in acknowledgement. "The usual, please." "Seared scallops with the side salad. Dressing on the side," she confirmed, noting how the sunlight from the window caught the silver in his otherwise dark hair. Despite his reputation for coldness, there was something compelling about his focused intensity. The hours ticked by, and as the afternoon lull settled over the restaurant, Abigail began her side work, folding napkins while mentally calculating how many extra shifts she would need to cover Jake's upcoming school field trip. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice Nathan Reed still sitting at his table, now staring pensively out the window. When she approached to offer a coffee refill, he surprised her by actually looking at her, really looking at her, for perhaps the first time. "Do you have children?" he asked abruptly. The question caught her off guard. Yes, a son. He's 6. Nathan nodded, something unreadable crossing his face. "I thought I recognized you. Your son attends Parkside Elementary, doesn't he? I've seen you two crossing Madison Square in the mornings." Abigail blinked in surprise. "Yes, that's right." He seemed about to say something else when his phone buzzed. The moment shattered as he answered it, his voice shifting into the clipped, authoritative tone she recognized from hearing him dictate business terms to associates over lunch. The rest of her shift passed uneventfully, though she found herself glancing at table 7 more often than necessary until Nathan finally left, leaving his usual generous tip. She pushed the strange interaction from her mind as she collected Jake from after-school care, listening to his animated stories about his day. That evening, as Jake spread his drawings across their small kitchen table, Abigail prepared a simple dinner of mac and cheese, his favorite. "Look what I drew today, Mom." Jake proudly held up a surprisingly detailed crayon drawing of a black car with a man standing beside it. The man wore a dark suit and had black hair with a touch of gray at the temples. "That's beautiful, honey," she said, leaning closer. "Who is it?" "It's the carman. Mr. Reed. Miss Collins had us draw someone we see in our neighborhood," Jake explained, pointing to the tall building he'd drawn in the background. "That's his building where he works. I see him every day from the playground." Abigail felt a strange flutter in her stomach. "It's really good, Jake. You got his car perfectly. Can I give it to him?" Jake asked, eyes wide with hope. "Ms. Collins said we should share our art with the people we drew." "Oh, sweetie, I don't think that's a good idea. Mr. Reed is a very busy and important man," Abigail said gently, not wanting to crush his enthusiasm, but knowing how unlikely it was that Nathan Reed would care about a child's drawing. Jake's face fell, but only momentarily. "Okay, maybe I'll just put it in his car sometime." "I know which one is his," Abigail laughed, ruffling his hair. "Let's not do that. That would be trespassing." The next morning, disaster struck. Mrs. Wilson called with a fever, unable to watch Jake after school. Abigail's shift didn't end until 6, and the after-school program closed at 5. Panic rising, she called every contact in her phone, but no one was available on such short notice. With no other options, she called Marcus, her voice tight with anxiety. "I have a childcare emergency. Is there any way I could leave at 4:30 today? I'll come in early tomorrow to make up the time." Marcus's hesitation spoke volumes. "Abby, you know Fridays are our busiest day, and the Reeds have their weekly business dinner scheduled tonight." Abigail closed her eyes, desperation washing over her. "Please, Marcus, I've never asked before." After a long pause, he relented. "Just this once, Abby, and you'll need to find someone to cover your tables." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you. I'll figure it out." The day was chaotic from the moment they arrived at school. In his rush, Jake forgot his backpack in the apartment, meaning Abigail would need to run home during her break to retrieve it. As they hurried across Madison Square once again, the familiar black Aston Martin pulled up beside them. The window rolled down, revealing Nathan Reed's face. "Morning," he said, surprising both of them. Jake, uninhibited by adult reservations, beamed. "Hi, Mr. Carman, I drew you yesterday." Abigail felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Jake, please," but Nathan's expression had softened imperceptibly. "Did you? I'd like to see it sometime." Before Abigail could respond, the light changed, and the sleek car pulled away, leaving her standing there in confusion. Jake, however, was ecstatic. "Mom, he wants to see my drawing. Can I take it tomorrow?" Abigail squeezed his hand, her mind whirling with the strangeness of the morning. "We'll see, buddy. We'll see." Little did she know that this brief exchange would set in motion events that would irrevocably change the course of her life, beginning with the moment she would walk into Rosetta's that evening to find Nathan Reed sitting at his usual table, a folder of documents before him, waiting for a business dinner that would never happen as planned. Because fate, it seemed, had other ideas. The Friday evening rush at Rosetta's was in full swing when Abigail arrived for her shift. The restaurant hummed with conversation and the clink of fine cutlery against imported porcelain. She tied her apron with practiced movements, her mind still occupied with the morning's strange encounter. "Table 7 is already asking for you," Marcus said, sliding past her with a tray of cocktails. "Your friend Mr. Reed specifically requested you as his server tonight." Abigail's hands faltered on her apron strings. "He asked for me? By name?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Indeed. Said he wouldn't have anyone else. Should I be concerned about my best waitress being poached by Reed Innovations?" His tone was teasing, but curiosity lingered in his eyes. "Hardly," Abigail replied, smoothing her hair. "I've served him dozens of times. He probably just likes consistency." But as she approached table 7, the butterflies in her stomach suggested this was something different. Nathan Reed sat alone, his usual stack of documents beside him, but his phone was nowhere in sight. Instead, his attention seemed fully present, his steel-grey eyes tracking her approach. "Good evening, Mr. Reed," she said, professional smile firmly in place despite her unease. "I understand you've requested me specifically tonight." Nathan nodded, folding his hands on the table. "I did. I hope that's not an inconvenience." "Not at all. It's my job," she replied, poised with her notepad. "Will your associates be joining you this evening?" "They've been delayed. Traffic from JFK." He glanced at his watch. "We have some time. I wanted to apologize for this morning. I didn't mean to put you on the spot with your son." Abigail blinked, caught off guard by his directness. "There's no need to apologize, Mr. Reed. Jake is enthusiastic. He's been fascinated by your car for months. A hint of a smile touched Nathan's lips. Just the car? Well, he calls you the car man, so I think the two are inseparable in his mind, she admitted, surprised to find herself relaxing slightly. And what does his mother call me? Nathan asked, his gaze steady on her face. The question caught her completely off guard. Mr. Reed. Or sir, she answered, feeling her professional mask slipping. Is there something specific you'd prefer? Nathan would be a start, he said, then gestured to the chair across from him. Would you sit for a moment? Unless you're too busy. Abigail glanced around nervously. Sitting with customers was absolutely against protocol, but Marcus was in the back, and her other tables were momentarily settled. Curiosity won out. She perched cautiously on the edge of the chair. I won't keep you long, Nathan said, reaching for the folder beside him. I was intrigued by what your son said this morning, about the drawing. Children and their imaginations, Abigail said with an apologetic smile. He's been working on his art. His teacher encourages them to draw people from their community. Nathan pulled a business card from his pocket and slid it across the table. I'd genuinely like to see it. I know it sounds strange, but... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his typically composed features. My nephew is about your son's age. I don't get to see him often. My sister lives in California, but I've been trying to connect better, understand children more. The admission was so unexpected that Abigail found herself momentarily speechless. The Nathan Reed of business magazines and financial news segments didn't seem like a man concerned with connecting to 6-year-olds. That's thoughtful of you, she finally managed, taking the card reflexively. My personal number is on the back, he continued. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to see the drawing. Maybe you could text me a photo. Before Abigail could respond, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, alarm rising as she saw the school's number on the screen. I'm sorry, I need to take this, she said, standing quickly. It's my son's school. Nathan nodded, concern crossing his features as Abigail stepped away to answer. Ms. Parker? This is Nurse Benton from Parkside Elementary, came the clipped voice on the other end. Jake took a fall during afternoon recess. He's all right, but he has a sprained wrist and should be picked up as soon as possible. Abigail's heart raced. I'll be there right away, she promised, already mentally calculating how quickly she could reach the school and what this would mean for her carefully balanced work schedule. She returned to Nathan's table, professionalism warring with maternal panic. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Reed, but I have an emergency. My son has been injured at school. I need to go, Nathan said simply, rising from his seat. Family comes first. Thank you for understanding. I'll send another server right over, she said, already backing away. Wait, Nathan called, reaching for his suit jacket. Let me drive you. Abigail froze. That's not necessary. It's faster than public transport, he pointed out, practical and decisive. And from what I gather, time is of the essence. Before she could formulate a proper response, Marcus appeared at her elbow. Everything all right, Abby? Jake's hurt at school. I need to go now, she explained, her voice tight with worry. Marcus frowned. But the Friday dinner rush, I've offered to drive her, Nathan interjected smoothly. I insist, actually. The authority in his voice left no room for argument. Marcus looked between them, clearly confused by this unexpected development, but unwilling to contradict one of the restaurant's most valued customers. Of course, Mr. Reed. Very generous of you, Marcus managed, then turned to Abigail. Go take care of Jake, we'll manage here. Minutes later, Abigail found herself in the passenger seat of the Aston Martin that had so captivated her son, the leather seats softer than anything she'd ever touched. Nathan drove with the same focused precision he brought to everything else, navigating Manhattan traffic with practiced ease. Turn left at the next light, she directed, still struggling to process the surreal turn her evening had taken. The school is just down the block, the one beside my building, Nathan noted. I've seen the children playing in the yard during lunch meetings. The observation reminded Abigail of the vast differences in their lives, how the playground that represented Jake's daily joy was merely a backdrop to Nathan's business deals. Thank you for doing this, she said quietly. You really didn't have to. I wanted to, he replied, his eyes fixed on the road. After a pause, he added, I know what it's like to get that call. When my nephew fell off the monkey bars last year, my sister was beside herself. This glimpse into his personal life surprised Abigail. How old is your nephew? 7. Dylan, a genuine smile, softened Nathan's features. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Reminds me of myself at that age, which worries my sister endlessly. They pulled up to the school, and Abigail was out of the car almost before it stopped moving. Nathan followed her inside, his tall figure incongruous in the elementary school hallway with its brightly colored bulletin boards and children's artwork. Jake sat in the nurse's office, his left wrist wrapped in an elastic bandage, tear tracks still visible on his cheeks. His eyes widened comically when he spotted Nathan behind his mother. "Mom, the carman is here," he exclaimed, momentarily forgetting his injury. "Mr. Reed was kind enough to give me a ride," Abigail explained, kneeling to examine Jake's wrist. "What happened, honey?" "I was showing Tyler how I could jump from the top of the slide, and I landed wrong," Jake admitted, having the grace to look slightly ashamed. "But look, I got a cool bandage." Nurse Benton approached with clipboard in hand. "It's just a mild sprain, Ms. Parker. Ice it tonight, and he should rest it over the weekend. If the swelling doesn't go down by Monday, you might want to have a doctor look at it." As Abigail signed the necessary forms, Jake tugged at Nathan's suit sleeve with his good hand. "Do you want to see my drawing of you now? It's in my backpack." "Jake, Mr. Reed is very busy," Abigail began, mortified, but Nathan was already crouching down to Jake's level. "I'd like that very much," he said, his voice gentler than Abigail had ever heard it. With his mother's help, Jake fished the slightly crumpled drawing from his backpack and proudly presented it to Nathan. The CEO studied it with genuine interest, taking in the detailed rendering of himself, standing beside his car in front of the Reed Innovations building. "This is excellent work," Nathan said seriously. "You've got the car exactly right, even the wheels. And is that me?" He pointed to the figure in the drawing. Jake nodded enthusiastically. "Yep, that's why you have the grey parts in your hair. Mom says it makes you look distinguished," Abigail supplied, her cheeks burning. "Jake, please." "Your mom is right," Nathan said, his eyes meeting Abigail's briefly before returning to Jake. "This is really impressive. Would you mind if I kept it?" Jake's face lit up with pure joy. "Really? You want to keep my drawing?" "Absolutely. I think it deserves a spot on my office wall," Nathan replied. "With the artist's permission, of course." "Yes," Jake bounced on the examination table, then winced as the movement jostled his wrist. As they walked out to the car, Jake chattering excitedly about his artwork and his classroom and anything else that crossed his mind, Abigail found herself studying Nathan Reed with new eyes. The ruthless businessman of magazine covers was nowhere to be seen in the man who listened patiently to her son's rambling stories, asking thoughtful questions and treating Jake's responses with genuine interest. In the car, Jake fell into an exhausted sleep within minutes, the day's excitement and injury catching up with him. In the sudden quiet, Abigail turned to Nathan. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. The ride, being kind to Jake, showing interest in his art." "I meant what I said about the drawing," Nathan replied, his voice equally low. "It's quite good for his age, and—" He hesitated, something uncharacteristically uncertain in his expression. "I'd like to make it up to you both. The inconvenience today, I mean." Abigail tensed slightly. "That's really not necessary." "Perhaps not necessary," he conceded, "but I'd like to all the same. Would you and Jake join me for brunch on Sunday? There's a place in Brooklyn that does excellent pancakes. Dylan raves about them whenever he visits." The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with implications Abigail wasn't sure she was ready to consider. Nathan Reed lived in a world so far removed from her own that the idea of deliberately crossing that boundary seemed foolish at best, dangerous at worst. And yet, as she looked at his profile illuminated by passing streetlights, she found herself wondering what it might be like to know the man behind the CEO facade, the uncle who remembered his nephew's favorite pancakes, the businessman who stopped to admire a child's drawing. "Jake loves pancakes," she heard herself saying, surprising them both. Nathan's smile in response felt like the beginning of something neither of them had anticipated, a chapter in a story neither had planned to write. Sunday morning dawned clear and crisp, the kind of perfect autumn day that made New York City glow golden. Abigail stood in front of her small bathroom mirror, scrutinizing her reflection with an intensity that bordered on ridiculous. She'd changed outfits 3 times already, something she hadn't done since college, before settling on dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that matched her eyes. "Mom, are you ready yet?" Jake called from the living room, his impatience palpable. Since waking at 6 a.m., he'd been buzzing with excitement about breakfast with the carman. "Almost, buddy," she replied, applying a touch of mascara with a slightly unsteady hand. "It was just brunch," she reminded herself. "Not a date. Definitely not a date." Then why did her stomach feel like it was hosting an Olympic gymnastics competition? The doorbell rang, sending Jake into a whirlwind of motion. "He's here, Mom, he's here! Jake, wait!" Abigail rushed from the bathroom, but her son had already flung open the apartment door. Nathan Reed stood in the hallway, looking surprisingly casual in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater over a button-down shirt. Without his usual suit, he appeared younger, more approachable, and Abigail couldn't help noticing, even more handsome. "Good morning," he greeted, his eyes taking in the modest apartment with interest rather than judgment. "I hope I'm not too early. You're right on time," Abigail assured him, grabbing her purse and jacket. "We're ready, aren't we, Jake?" Jake nodded enthusiastically, proudly displaying his wrist, now wrapped in a bright blue bandage. "Look, Mr. Reed, the nurse at school gave me a colored one yesterday when we went back to get my homework." "Very impressive," Nathan said seriously. "Blue is an excellent choice, matches your mom's sweater." The observation made Abigail feel suddenly self-conscious. Had he noticed her outfit on purpose? Was she overthinking this entire situation? The drive to Brooklyn was filled with Jake's animated chatter, punctuated by Nathan's thoughtful responses. Abigail found herself observing their interaction with growing fascination. Nathan spoke to Jake with the same attentiveness he might give a business colleague, never talking down to him or dismissing his questions, no matter how random or peculiar they might be. "Do you have to wear suits every day?" Jake asked as they crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. "Most days," Nathan replied. "It's expected in my position." "That sounds boring," Jake declared with 6-year-old bluntness. "I'm going to be an astronaut, or maybe a zookeeper." "Do they wear suits?" "I don't believe zookeepers typically wear suits," Nathan said, amusement warming his voice. "Though astronauts do wear a type of suit, just not the kind I wear." "Do you like being a CEO?" Jake persisted. "Mom says you run a whole building full of people." Nathan glanced at Abigail in the rearview mirror, one eyebrow raised. "Does she now?" "I may have explained who you are," Abigail admitted. "After the drawing incident, I see." Nathan navigated smoothly through Sunday morning traffic. "To answer your question, Jake, yes, I do like being a CEO, though it can be challenging. I get to solve interesting problems and work with smart people. But you don't get to play much, do you?" Jake asked, his voice suddenly serious. "You're always working when I see you." The innocent observation seemed to strike a chord. Nathan was quiet for a moment before responding. "You're right. I don't play nearly enough." The pancake restaurant was exactly as Nathan had described, a charming corner establishment with exposed brick walls and the mouth-watering aroma of maple syrup and coffee. Despite the Sunday crowd, they were immediately led to a reserved table by the window. "Mr. Reed, wonderful to see you again," the host greeted warmly. "Your usual table is ready." "Thank you, Michael," Nathan replied, pulling out Abigail's chair for her, a gesture so automatic it spoke of deeply ingrained manners rather than calculated charm. Jake's eyes widened at the menu's offerings. "Mom, they have chocolate chip banana pancakes and blueberry ones with whipped cream." "I can see that," Abigail laughed, relieved by her son's unfiltered enthusiasm. It cut through the awkwardness she'd been feeling, reminding her why they were here. "Just remember, whatever you order, you need to finish." "My nephew recommends the chocolate chip banana," Nathan offered conspiratorially, "though I'm partial to their lemon ricotta myself." When their food arrived, chocolate chip banana for Jake, lemon ricotta for Nathan, and blueberry for Abigail, Jake's mouth dropped open at the towering stacks. "These are the biggest pancakes ever." The meal progressed with surprising ease. Abigail had worried about uncomfortable silences or forced conversation, but between Jake's endless questions and Nathan's unexpected willingness to share stories about his work and family, the time passed pleasantly. "So you grew up in Connecticut?" Abigail asked, genuinely curious about the man behind the business persona. Nathan nodded, cutting another perfect bite of his pancakes. "Fairfield County. My father was in finance, my mother in education." They had very specific expectations for their children. "And did you meet those expectations?" she asked, sensing a story beneath the surface. A smile touched his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Exceeded them, professionally, in other areas." He trailed off, then glanced at Jake, who was absorbed in creating a syrup moat around his pancake fortress. "Let's just say that my personal life hasn't been as successful as my business ventures." "Is that why you work so much?" The question slipped out before Abigail could censor it. "Partly," Nathan admitted, surprising her with his candor. "Work makes sense to me. It always has. The rules are clearer." Abigail understood that sentiment more than he might realize. After Jake's father left, she'd thrown herself into working and parenting with single-minded focus. Relationships were messy, unpredictable. Shifts at the restaurant, however demanding, followed a pattern she could understand and control. "And what about you?" Nathan asked, redirecting the conversation. "How did you end up at Rosetta's?" Abigail tensed slightly, uncertain how much of her story to share. "I was in college when I got pregnant with Jake. His father wasn't prepared for fatherhood. I took a semester off that turned permanent when I realized I needed steady income more than a degree." She waited for the judgment or pity that usually followed this admission, but Nathan's expression remained neutral, interested rather than evaluating. "What were you studying?" he asked instead. "Art history, with a minor in business," she replied, grateful for his tact. "I had this idea I might work in gallery management someday." "You still could," Nathan pointed out. "Many of the most successful people I know took non-traditional paths." Before she could respond, Jake interjected, "Mom paints really pretty pictures. She has a whole box of them under her bed." "Jake," Abigail murmured, embarrassed. "Is that right?" Nathan's interest seemed genuine. "I'd like to see them sometime." "They're just hobby pieces," she demurred. "Nothing serious." "Art doesn't have to be serious to be valuable," Nathan replied, then checked his watch. "We should probably head out if we're going to make our next stop." Abigail blinked in surprise. "Next stop? I hope you don't mind," Nathan said, suddenly looking slightly uncertain. "I thought Jake might enjoy the Natural History Museum. They have a new dinosaur exhibit my nephew couldn't stop talking about when he visited last month." "Dinosaurs?" Jake's head shot up, Pancake Fortress forgotten. "Real ones?" "Real fossils," Nathan confirmed. "If that's all right with your mother, of course." All eyes turned to Abigail, who found herself momentarily speechless. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering what might interest a 6-year-old boy, caught her completely off guard. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I know," Nathan replied simply. "I want to." The museum was crowded with Sunday visitors, but Nathan led them confidently through the throngs, seeming to know exactly where they were going. Jake's hand was firmly clasped in Abigail's as they moved through the cavernous halls, his head swiveling constantly to take in the dioramas and displays. "How did you know your way around so well?" Abigail asked as Nathan guided them to the new exhibit without hesitation. "I practically lived here as a kid," he admitted, a nostalgic smile softening his features. "Whenever I could escape my father's expectations for a few hours, this is where I'd come. The dinosaurs were always my favorite." The image of a young Nathan Reed hiding among prehistoric creatures to avoid parental pressure added another unexpected layer to the man she was gradually getting to know. "Look, Mom!" Jake's voice echoed through the hall as they entered the dinosaur exhibition. He pointed at an enormous skeleton dominating the center of the room. "It's bigger than our whole apartment." For the next hour, they wandered among the exhibits, Jake's enthusiasm infectious. Even Nathan seemed to shed years as he explained the differences between carnivores and herbivores, pointing out fascinating details about each specimen. Abigail found herself watching the two of them with a strange tightness in her chest, seeing her son so animated, so engaged with a male figure who treated him with genuine interest and respect. It was while Jake was pressed against the glass of a velociraptor display that Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression instantly transforming from relaxed to focused. "I'm sorry," he said, already typing a response. "There's a situation at work I need to address." "On a Sunday?" Abigail couldn't help asking. "The markets in Asia are opening," he explained, slipping the phone back into his pocket. "I have a deal finalizing in Tokyo that's hitting some unexpected complications." Abigail nodded, the magical bubble of their day together suddenly punctured by reality. "We understand. Thank you for brunch and the museum. It was very kind of you. I need to go to the office," Nathan said, his tone apologetic but firm. "But I'd like you both to come with me if you're willing. It shouldn't take long to sort out, and then perhaps we could continue our day. The view from my office is quite something. Jake might enjoy it." The invitation surprised her. Reed Innovations' headquarters was Nathan's domain. Bringing them there represented a crossing of boundaries she hadn't anticipated. "Please, Mom," Jake pleaded, clearly enchanted by the idea of seeing the inside of the big glass building he'd observed from his school playground. Against her better judgment, Abigail found herself nodding. "All right, but we won't intrude on your work." 20 minutes later, they were riding the express elevator to the top floor of Reed Innovations. Jake's face was pressed against the glass wall of the elevator, watching Manhattan fall away beneath them. "This is the coolest elevator ever," he declared, his breath fogging the glass. When the doors opened directly into the executive suite, Abigail suddenly felt painfully out of place in her casual Sunday attire. The space screamed wealth and power, all gleaming surfaces, modern art, and floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of the city. "Make yourselves comfortable," Nathan said, gesturing to a sitting area. "There's a tablet on the table with games Jake might enjoy. This shouldn't take more than 30 minutes. As he disappeared into his office, Abigail sank onto the plush sofa, trying to reconcile the Nathan, who had enthusiastically explained Triceratops facts to her son, with the powerful CEO who commanded this empire. Jake, unbothered by such complexities, was already exploring the tablet, exclaiming over the games he discovered. "Mom, look, they have Dinosaur Explorer Pro. That costs money on your phone." "Mr. Reed is very generous," Abigail murmured, her eyes wandering to the spectacular view of the city. It was while Jake was deeply engrossed in his game that Abigail noticed a door to Nathan's office had been left ajar. Voices drifted through, Nathan's and another man's, their tones tense. "The timing is suspicious, Nathan," the unknown voice was saying. "Right when we're finalizing the Tokyo acquisition, these photos surface. Someone's trying to sabotage you." "The photos are irrelevant," Nathan replied, his voice cold and controlled in a way Abigail hadn't heard before. "My personal life has nothing to do with this deal. When it's plastered all over the financial blogs that Reed Innovations' CEO is cozying up to a waitress and her kid, investors ask questions," the other man argued. "They wonder if you're distracted, making emotional decisions." Abigail froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. "That's enough, David." Nathan's voice had dropped dangerously low. "My private life is my own business. Handle the Tokyo situation without bringing Miss Parker or her son into it. I'm just saying the timing is interesting. You've never shown interest in single mothers before. Are you sure this isn't some kind of setup? These things happen to men in your position." Abigail had heard enough. Quietly, she stood and collected Jake's belongings, her hands trembling slightly. "Jake, honey, we need to go," she whispered. "But Mr. Reed said—" "Now, Jake," she insisted, taking the tablet from his reluctant hands and placing it on the table. As they stepped back into the elevator, Abigail caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished doors, her face pale, eyes wide with humiliation. The doors were just closing when Nathan emerged from his office, his expression changing from confusion to alarm as he spotted them leaving. "Abigail, wait," he called, but the elevator was already descending, carrying them away from the world she should have known better than to enter. The November rain fell in sheets, matching Abigail's mood as she maneuvered through the Monday morning rush at Rosetta's. 3 days had passed since their hasty exit from Reed Innovations, 3 days of ignoring the 6 missed calls and 4 text messages from Nathan that had accumulated on her phone. She'd read them all, of course, each one more apologetic than the last, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. "Order up for table 12, Marcus called, sliding a plate of eggs Benedict toward her. "Thanks," she murmured, balancing it expertly on her arm as she collected a cappuccino from the barista station. "Still no word from your CEO friend?" Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral. The story of their Sunday excursion, minus the humiliating ending, had become necessary to explain Jake's excited chatter about Mr. Reed's dinosaur adventure to Mrs. Wilson. "He's not my friend," Abigail replied tersely, "and I'd prefer not to discuss it." The truth was she couldn't stop replaying the conversation she'd overheard, the cold assessment of her as a waitress and her kid, the implication that she might be trying to manipulate Nathan for his money or position. It had crystallized every fear she'd had about crossing the social divide between them. What stung most was the realization that she'd begun to care. Somewhere between the pancakes and the dinosaur exhibit, she'd started to see Nathan Reed as a person, rather than just the car man or the wealthy CEO who frequented her restaurant. His genuine interest in Jake, his surprising vulnerability when speaking about his family, these glimpses had affected her more than she wanted to admit. "He's been calling the restaurant too," Marcus added, interrupting her thoughts. "Twice yesterday. Asked if you were working." Abigail nearly dropped the cappuccino. "You didn't tell him my schedule, did you?" "Of course not," Marcus assured her. "But Abby," he sounded concerned, not like a man with bad intentions. "You don't understand," she said, shaking her head. "Men like him live in a different world. Whatever he thought he was doing with us was just, I don't know, some kind of charitable experiment. a distraction. The words felt bitter on her tongue, especially when she remembered the way Nathan's eyes had crinkled at the corners when Jake made him laugh, or how carefully he'd explained the museum exhibits. Had it all been an act? Or worse, had it been genuine interest tainted by an unbridgeable social gulf? The day dragged on, rain continuing to pound against the restaurant windows as if determined to wash away all memory of Sunday's golden sunshine. By mid-afternoon, Abigail's feet ached and her smile felt permanently plastered on her face, professional, distant, revealing nothing of the confusion beneath. She was clearing a four-top near the window when a sleek black umbrella appeared outside, followed by the unmistakable figure of Nathan Reed. Abigail froze, plates balanced precariously in her hands, as he spotted her through the glass. Their eyes locked for a moment before she deliberately turned away, continuing to the kitchen as if she hadn't seen him. "He's here," she told Marcus, her voice tight. "If he asks for me, I'm on break." Marcus gave her a long look. "Running away doesn't solve anything, Abby." "I'm not running away," she insisted. "I'm protecting myself and my son from getting hurt by someone whose world we can never truly be part of." She retreated to the employee break room, sinking onto the worn couch with a shaky exhale. Through the small window, she could see the steady stream of rain turning the city into a blur of grey. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Just as she was considering it safe to return to the floor, the break room door opened. Nathan stood in the doorway, his normally immaculate suit slightly damp at the shoulders, his expression a mixture of determination and uncertainty. "You can't be back here," Abigail said immediately, standing. "This area is for staff only." "Marcus made an exception," Nathan replied, remaining by the door as if giving her space to flee if she chose. "I needed to speak with you." "There's nothing to say," she countered, crossing her arms protectively across her chest. "I heard enough on Sunday." Nathan's jaw tightened. "What you overheard was David being an idiot. Those weren't my words or my thoughts." "But they were true, weren't they?" Abigail challenged. "I am just a waitress. Jake is just a kid from a single-parent household. We're not part of your world, and pretending otherwise was misguided." "Is that what you think this was?" Nathan asked, his voice suddenly quiet. "Some kind of social experiment? Or worse, that I was using you both for some ulterior purpose?" When Abigail didn't answer, he continued, taking a step closer. "I've spent 15 years building Reed Innovations, 15 years of 16-hour days, sacrificing everything personal for professional success. Do you know what that's earned me? A penthouse I barely see, more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and not a single person who knows me as anything other than Nathan Reed, CEO. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically frustrated that it caught Abigail off guard. Then one morning, this kid points at my car with complete delight. No agenda, no calculation, just pure enthusiasm. And his mother. His eyes met hers. His mother looks at me like I'm just a man, not a corporate entity or a bank account. The raw honesty in his voice made something twist painfully in Abigail's chest. Nathan, I've handled this all wrong, he admitted. I should have been clearer about my intentions from the beginning. The truth is, I enjoyed Sunday more than any day I can remember in years, not because it was extraordinary or expensive, but because it was real. You and Jake are real in a way my life hasn't been for a very long time. Abigail found herself wavering, the wall she'd constructed beginning to crack. Even if that's true, your colleague wasn't wrong. People like you don't date people like me without consequences. Your investors, your board, they'd see me as a liability. Let me worry about my board, Nathan said firmly. As for investors, do you know what they care about most? Results, and I've delivered those consistently for years. He took another step closer, close enough now that she could detect the subtle scent of his cologne beneath the rainwater clinging to his coat. The real question is whether you're willing to give this, whatever it might be, a chance to develop naturally, without assumptions about what is or isn't possible. Before Abigail could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced down to see Mrs. Wilson's name on the screen, followed by words that made her heart stop. Jake fell at school. They're taking him to Manhattan General, meeting them there now. What is it? Nathan asked, instantly alert to her change in expression. Jake, she whispered, already reaching for her jacket. He's hurt. They're taking him to the hospital. Without hesitation, Nathan took her elbow, guiding her toward the door. My car's outside. We'll get there faster than an ambulance in this traffic. For once, Abigail didn't argue. Marcus barely had time to register her rushed explanation before they were out the door, racing through the rain to the waiting Aston Martin. The drive to Manhattan General was a blur of windshield wipers, honking horns, and Abigail's racing thoughts. Nathan navigated the gridlocked streets with grim determination, occasionally using side streets and alleys that spoke of intimate knowledge of the city's hidden pathways. "He'll be all right," Nathan said quietly, one hand briefly covering hers where it lay clenched on her knee. Children are remarkably resilient. When they finally reached the emergency room entrance, Nathan pulled up directly in front of the doors. "Go," he urged. "I'll park and find you." Abigail raced inside, her rain-soaked hair dripping onto the linoleum as she approached the reception desk. "My son, Jake Parker. He was brought in from Parkside Elementary." The nurse checked her computer. "Yes, he's in pediatric assessment, Bay 3. Are you his mother?" "Yes," Abigail confirmed breathlessly, following the nurse's pointing finger toward a curtained area. Jake lay on an examination bed, his face pale but his eyes brightening when he spotted her. "Mrs. Wilson stood beside him, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled with worry. "Mom!" Jake called, his voice wavering between bravery and tears. "I fell from the monkey bars. They think my arm might be broken." Abigail rushed to his side, taking in the temporary splint on his right arm with mounting concern. "Oh, honey, what happened?" "I was showing Tyler how I could do the whole monkey bar course without stopping," Jake explained, wincing as he shifted position. "But my hand slipped because of the rain." "He was very brave," Mrs. Wilson assured her. "Didn't cry once in the ambulance." A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Parker, I'm Dr. Levinson. We've taken x-rays of Jake's arm, and he does have a fracture of the radius, what we call a buccal fracture. It's common in children his age, and fortunately it's not displaced." "What does that mean for treatment?" Abigail asked, trying to keep her voice steady for Jake's sake. "He'll need a cast for about 6 weeks," the doctor explained. "The good news is children heal quickly, and this type of fracture usually heals completely without complications." "A cast?" Jake perked up slightly. "Can I get a blue one, like my bandage from last week?" "Absolutely," Dr. Levinson smiled. "We have several colors to choose from." As they discussed the details of Jake's care, Abigail became aware of a tall figure hovering just outside the curtained area. Nathan stood there, his expression concerned as he caught her eye. "Is that the car man?" Jake asked, spotting him. "Did he come to see me too?" Nathan stepped forward hesitantly. "I hope that's all right." "Mr. Reed drove me here," Abigail explained to Mrs. Wilson, whose eyebrows had nearly reached her hairline. "Thank you for staying with Jake." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Wilson replied, giving Nathan a curious once-over before gathering her things. "I'll check on you tomorrow, Jake. Be brave with that cast." After she'd gone, Nathan approached Jake's bedside. His typical commanding presence softened into something gentler. "So, monkey bars in the rain, huh? That sounds like quite an adventure." "It was awesome until I fell," Jake admitted. "Now I'm getting a cast. Dr. Levinson says my friends can sign it." "That is a silver lining," Nathan agreed seriously. "I'd be honored to sign it if you'll allow me." The simple request lit up Jake's face. "Really? You want to sign my cast?" "Of course. Artists should always sign their work, and this cast will be a work of art, I'm sure." While they chatted, Abigail stepped aside with Dr. Levinson to complete paperwork and discuss follow-up care. When they reached the matter of payment, her stomach knotted with familiar anxiety. "I'll need to check what my insurance covers," she began, mentally calculating what she could pull from her meager savings. "It's been taken care of," the doctor said, looking slightly confused. "The financial office informed me that all expenses have been covered." Abigail's head snapped up. "What? By whom?" But she already knew the answer. Looking back at the examination bed, she saw Nathan showing Jake something on his phone, both of them laughing at whatever was on the screen. "Excuse me," she murmured to the doctor, marching back to confront Nathan. "Can I speak with you for a moment, privately?" Nathan nodded, giving Jake's good shoulder a gentle squeeze before following Abigail to a quiet corner of the emergency department. "You paid Jake's hospital bill," she stated flatly, keeping her voice low but intense. "Without asking me." "I did," Nathan admitted without apology. "I have excellent health coverage, and adding Jake as a one-time exception was simple." "That's not the point," Abigail insisted. "You can't just sweep in and start paying for things." "It makes me feel like a charity case," Nathan finished, his gaze steady on hers. "That wasn't my intention. I saw a problem I could solve, and I solved it. It's what I do, Abigail. It doesn't mean I think less of you or your ability to care for Jake." She wanted to be angry, to maintain the protective wall she'd built, but exhaustion and relief were eroding her defenses. I need to be able to take care of my own son. And you do, Nathan said softly. Better than most parents I've seen. He's kind, curious, resilient, all qualities that reflect your parenting, not your bank account. He hesitated, then reached for her hand, enfolding it in both of his. Let me propose something, not charity, but partnership. I have resources that could make both your lives easier. You have something I've been missing without even realizing it. Authenticity, perspective, joy in simple things. What are you saying? Abigail asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me, Nathan replied. The carefully controlled CEO nowhere in evidence as vulnerability shone in his eyes, not as a benefactor or a car man, but as someone who cares deeply about both of you. Before she could respond, a nurse approached to inform them that Jake was ready for his cast. They returned to find him excitedly examining color swatches, finally selecting a vibrant blue that he declared was exactly like Mr. Reed's eyes. The casting process took nearly an hour, during which Nathan never left their side, entertaining Jake with stories about his own childhood mishaps and keeping Abigail supplied with much-needed coffee from the hospital cafeteria. When they finally exited the hospital, the rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glistening in the late afternoon light. Jake, drowsy from pain medication, but proudly displaying his new blue cast, leaned heavily against Abigail's side. I think someone needs dinner and an early bedtime, she observed, brushing his hair back from his forehead. I could have my driver take you both home, Nathan offered, his car appearing as if summoned by thought alone. Or? Abigail prompted when he hesitated. Or I could make you both dinner at my place, he suggested. It's closer than your apartment, and Jake could rest comfortably. I make a mean mac and cheese. Dylan approved. The invitation hung between them, weighted with possibility. Abigail looked down at Jake, then back at Nathan, seeing beyond the expensive suit and powerful persona to the man who had dropped everything to rush to the hospital with her, who had made her son laugh even in pain, who was offering not just dinner but a tentative step into his world. What do you think, Jake? She asked, including him in the decision. Mac and cheese at Mr. Reed's house or home to our apartment? Jake considered for approximately 2 seconds before declaring, Mac and cheese. Does your place have a view like your office, Mr. Reed? Nathan laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Even better. And you can call me Nathan if that's okay with your mum. Jake looked to Abigail for permission, his expression hopeful despite his fatigue. In that moment she made her decision, not just about dinner, but about possibilities she'd previously dismissed as impossible. Nathan it is, she agreed, accepting his outstretched hand as he helped them into the car. As they drove through the twilight city, Jake dozed against her shoulder, while Nathan's hand remained intertwined with hers on the seat between them. The future stretched before them, unwritten but suddenly rich with potential, a story that had begun with a simple drawing and a chance encounter, now opening into chapters neither of them could have anticipated. In the soft glow of the dashboard lights, Abigail found herself smiling for the first time in days. The path ahead might not be easy, crossing as it did between such different worlds, but she was beginning to believe it might be worth exploring. One step, one meal, one day at a time. And as Nathan's penthouse came into view, its windows illuminated against the darkening sky like a lighthouse guiding them home, she squeezed his hand, accepting not just his invitation to dinner, but to the possibility of something more enduring, a shared future where differences in circumstance mattered less than the connections they'd begun to forge, connections built on understanding, respect, and the unexpected joy that can arise when life's carefully drawn lines begin.